Welcome back, everyone, to another deep dive. This time, we're going deep into Douglas Murray's The Madness of Crowds. It's a book tackling some seriously hot topics like gender, race, and identity. You know, all the stuff everyone's talking about these days in the 21st century.
And it's definitely a book that makes you think.
It does. Have you ever just felt like, whoa, hold on, how did we get here? Like everything's changing so fast, and everyone's suddenly on board with ideas that seem to have come out of nowhere.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
That's exactly the feeling Murray captures. He calls it crowd madness. This idea that we're just getting swept up in these new social justice movements without really stopping to think critically about what we're signing up for.
Especially with social media, it's like it's on hyperdrive.
Totally. And Murray dives right into some controversial stuff, starting with gay rights. Huge victory, right? Equality, amazing. But he says the goalposts have moved.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, he argues that while the fight for equality was hugely successful, we've now got this more radical queer ideology popping up. And to show what he means, he uses Dr. Michael Davidson and his film Voices of the Silenced as an example. So Davidson, he claims to have changed from gay to straight.
Okay.
And now he offers counseling to others wanting to do the same. But instead of, having an open discussion about it, the media just shut him down, labeled it harmful conversion therapy, without even actually examining his methods.
Wow. So right off the bat, we're seeing this theme of silencing dissenting voices.
Exactly. And that's one of Murray's big concerns. He argues that even within movements fighting for equality, you can get this intolerance, this silencing of anyone who doesn't totally toe the party line.
It's like you can't even question the direction things are going without being called a bigot or worse.
And it's not just about being anti-progress. It's about making sure we're not just blindly following the crowd. But on this point about how fast things change, Murray uses gay marriage as an example. Think about it like a decade ago, barely anyone supported it.
Right. Even within gay rights groups themselves.
Now, opposing it is practically unthinkable. And while obviously that's positive in a lot of ways, Murray's point is that maybe these rapid changes should be approached with, more careful thought, more open debate, not just blind acceptance.
It's like, where's the space for nuance, for different opinions?
Exactly. And that brings us to another complicated idea, intersectionality. You probably heard this word everywhere, but what does it actually mean?
Well, it's the idea that different forms of oppression like sexism, racism, homophobia, they're all connected and reinforce each other. But Murray's saying, while that might sound good on paper,
it's not so simple in real life.
Yeah, he suggests it can lead to problems. Like, instead of bringing people together, it actually creates more division.
More division, how?
Well, for one, he says it can create this, hierarchy of victimhood, where people compete for recognition based on how oppressed they think they are, which can lead to some really distorted views of power dynamics.
Oh, I see. So it's not so much about unity as it is about
who's the most disadvantaged.
Yeah, that's rough. And I remember hearing about this incident at Evergreen State College. Murray uses it as an example.
Oh, yeah. Tell me if I've got this right. A professor there, Brett Weinstein, questioned a racially charged event where white people were told to leave campus for a day.
That's the one. And instead of having a conversation about his concerns, students labeled him a racist. Things totally blew up. The college had to shut down.
That's intense. So Murray's point is that this kind of thinking, this intersectionality, can be weaponized to just shut down dissent, especially in places like universities where open dialogue is supposed to be the whole point.
It's a bit scary, honestly. Where can you even have these tough conversations if not at a university?
Right.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, let's talk about men and women. The so-called battle of the sexes. Murray gets pretty real about modern feminism here.
Yeah, he doesn't hold back. What's he saying?
Well, he argues that, yes, pushing for equality is crucial. There's this strain of misandry, basically man-hating, that's become pretty common in some feminist circles.
Yeah.
And he gives some examples like the whole men are trash thing you see online.
Yikes. So is he saying sexism against women doesn't exist?
No, not at all. He's just saying that this hostility towards men is sometimes more accepted, even celebrated, like there's a double standard.
I see.
He also talks about Mayim Bialik, the actress. You know how she often talks about modesty and conservative values?
Yeah, vaguely.
Well, Murray points out that she also, willingly exposed herself on a talk show for laughs.
No way, really?
Yeah. Again, he's not judging her choice. It's more about pointing out these mixed messages women receive, like be strong, be independent. But UP also conform to certain expectations about your body and how you should act.
It's like a catch-22.
Exactly. And it leads to a lot of confusion for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So Murray's not saying feminism is bad, but that maybe we need to be more aware of those double standards, those hypocrisies that can creep in.
Have a more honest conversation about the challenges faced by both men and women.
Exactly. And this all ties back to that crowd madness idea.
Yeah.
But this next topic is one people tend to avoid.
Yeah.
Race. And Murray calls it the ugliest landmine for a reason.
I can see why.
He acknowledges all the progress that's been made on racial equality. But he says we tend to overstate the problem, present things as way worse than they are.
So kind of like a doom and gloom perspective.
Yeah. And he thinks it prevents us from having these difficult but important conversations, especially when it comes to sensitive stuff like race and IQ.
Ooh, yeah, that's always going to be a touchy one.
Big time.
Yeah.
He uses the bell curve controversy as an example. That book explored potential links between race and intelligence. Super controversial, obviously.
I remember vaguely hearing about that.
It was meticulously researched, but the authors were basically labeled racists, and that shut down any real discussion about the topic. So again, Murray's not denying racism exists. It's more about
a fear of even having the conversation.
Right. It's like we've created this intellectual minefield where any view that goes against the accepted narrative is instantly shot down. And that actually hinders progress toward real understanding.
It's like, how can we even begin to address these issues if we can't even talk about them?
That's his whole point. And now buckle up, because we're diving into maybe the most controversial topic, the trans movement. Murray explores how quickly it's risen and how, in a short time it's become almost unquestionable.
So is he denying the experiences of transgender people?
No, not at all. He acknowledges how complex gender identity is. He even talks about individuals who've transitioned, like Jan Morris, who did so decades ago, and Blair White, a YouTuber who transitioned and later detransitioned.
So where's the controversy then?
His concern is the lack of open discussion about the potential downsides of transitioning, especially for young people. Like, are we rushing into medical and social transitions without fully understanding the long-term consequences?
So making sure people, especially young people, are making really informed decisions.
Exactly. He's also worried about this pressure to conform to a specific narrative, even within the LGBTQ plus community, and the silencing of anyone who raises concerns or questions.
It's like, again, that lack of space for different perspectives.
Exactly. And he's not saying don't transition. It's more about
having those honest conversations, even when they're tough.
Yes. He thinks this silencing of dissent actually hurts everyone, even those the movement is trying to protect.
This is a lot to think about.
I know, right? It's heavy stuff, but important stuff. And it's only part one.
Can't wait to see where we go from here. It's wild, right? Like, we get so caught up in the momentum of these movements that we forget to, stop and think for ourselves.
Totally. And Murray's point is that this lack of critical thinking can actually make things worse, not better.
Yeah, one of his key arguments is that technology, especially social media, is like throwing gasoline on the fire of this crowd madness.
It makes sense, right? Social media is all about echo chambers and outrage.
Exactly. It creates these online spaces where you're constantly surrounded by people who agree with you. And the algorithms just feed you more and more of what you already believe.
And the more extreme the content, the more likely it is to go viral.
Totally. It's designed to keep you engaged, even if it means making you angry or afraid.
So we're being manipulated.
Murray argues that we're being manipulated into reacting emotionally instead of thinking critically. He says we're so quick to judge and condemn that we've forgotten how to have nuanced conversations.
And it's like you can't even disagree with someone without being accused of being hateful or bigoted.
He calls this language policing, this obsession with labeling people as phobic or problematic for expressing views that fall outside the accepted norm.
It's like walking on eggshells. You're constantly afraid of saying the wrong thing and being canceled.
And that fear, as Murray points out, is actually stifling progress. It prevents us from having the honest and open conversations that we need to have to understand each other and create real change.
So where do we go from here? If we can't rely on social media and we can't just shut down anyone who disagrees with us, how do we even begin to have these difficult conversations?
Well, Murray says it starts with humility.
Humility.
Yeah, recognizing the limits of our own knowledge, acknowledging that we don't have all the answers and that there are multiple perspectives on every issue.
So being willing to listen to other viewpoints even if they make us uncomfortable.
Exactly. It's about understanding that disagreement doesn't equal hatred, and that we can learn from people who see the world differently than we do.
Easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right? Especially when we feel so passionately about something.
It definitely takes effort. And it requires us to be more mindful of our own biases and to approach these conversations with an open mind and a willingness to learn.
Murray also talks about personal responsibility, right?
Yeah.
Like taking ownership of our own lives instead of blaming others.
Yes, that's a huge part of his message. He argues that instead of focusing on systemic oppression and playing the victim, we need to focus on what we can control, our own choices, our own actions.
I think it's easy to fall into that trap of feeling like we're powerless to change things.
Absolutely. But Murray reminds us that we all have agency. We can choose how we respond to the challenges we face.
So it's about empowering individuals to create change.
Exactly. He acknowledges that privilege exists and that not everyone starts at the same place, but he also emphasizes that individuals have the power to overcome obstacles and create a better future for themselves.
I love that. It's about focusing on what we can do, not what we can't.
And it's about recognizing that we all have a role to play in creating a more just and equitable world.
This idea of personal responsibility is so powerful. It's easy to get caught up in blame and anger, but ultimately, we're responsible for our own happiness and success.
And it's that sense of responsibility that can help us move beyond division and find common ground.
Instead of focusing on what separates us, we can focus on what unites us.
Exactly. We all want to live in a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive and where differences are celebrated rather than feared.
A world where we can have open and honest conversations without resorting to name-calling and personal attacks.
Exactly. And Murray's book is such a valuable tool for navigating these complex issues. He offers a framework for moving forward that is both compassionate and courageous.
He pushes us to think critically, to challenge assumptions, and to engage in respectful dialogue.
And that's what we need more of in the world. People who are willing to listen, to learn, and to work together.
Wow, this has been like a real deep dive, hasn't it? Yet the madness of crowds really makes you think about all this stuff we talk about all the time. Gender, race, identity, in a totally different way.
It's like he shines a light on all these unspoken anxieties, you know?
Yeah. And for me, what really stands out is this like undercurrent of fear around these topics. We're so terrified of saying the wrong thing that we end up shutting down any real conversation.
It's like everyone's walking on eggshells, constantly worried about being labeled or canceled if they don't follow the script perfectly.
Right. But Murray's saying that this fear is actually holding us back.
Totally. It's preventing us from having those tough but necessary conversations that could actually lead to progress and understanding.
So, okay, then how do we break free from this culture of fear? How do we open up space for genuine, respectful debate, even on the most sensitive topics?
Well, I think it starts with remembering that disagreement doesn't automatically equal hate. Like, just because someone sees things differently than you do doesn't make them a bad person.
It's about basic respect, right? Even for those we disagree with.
Exactly. And being willing to listen to those perspectives that challenge our own, even when it's uncomfortable, because sometimes those are the perspectives we need to hear the most.
It's like they say, growth happens outside your comfort zone. If we only ever surround ourselves with people who agree with us, we're never going to learn or grow.
Exactly. That's why it's so important to actively seek out diverse perspectives. Read books and articles that challenge your assumptions. Have conversations with people who hold different views, even if it's just to try to understand where they're coming from.
You might not change your mind, but at least you'll expand your understanding of the world, add some nuance to your thinking.
And that's really what the madness of crowds is all about. It's a call to move beyond those knee-jerk reactions, the social media frenzy, and really engage in more thoughtful, nuanced conversations.
To see the humanity in those who hold different views and try to find that common ground.
It's not always easy, but it's crucial if we actually want to build a better world, a more just and equitable world.
Well said. Murray's book is definitely one that makes you think, it challenges your assumptions, pushes you to have those tough conversations. And it reminds us that real progress, it takes more than just passion. It takes a willingness to listen, to reflect, and to engage in open dialogue, even when it's hard.
I couldn't agree more.
So if you're feeling a little overwhelmed by all the noise and negativity out there, I highly recommend checking out The Madness of Crowds. It might just change your perspective and inspire you to start having those difficult but necessary conversations that can lead to real change.
Couldn't agree more.
And as always, we want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the madness of crowds? What resonated with you? Leave a comment down below. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Book Reviews 1 for more deep dives into the books shaping our world. Until next time, happy reading.